than 600 games released for the NES in its lifespan, there are going to be some great games that get lost in the shuffle. Beyond the Marios, Castlevanias, Contras, and Mega Mans, there are a lot of games for the console that I don't often hear anyone talking about. It's kind of hard to define exactly what a hidden gem is, but here I'm just using it to denote games that I think deserve a little more time in the spotlight and have probably just been overlooked over the years simply because people had just never heard of them. I've got 10 games to talk about today, with enough games in mind for me to make at least 2 more of these videos, so I'm excited about that. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at 10 hidden gems on the Nintendo Entertainment System. First up, we have Astyanax. Astyanax, which I think that's how it's pronounced, was published by Jaleco in 1990. I'm leading off with this one for a few reasons. This was the first NES cart that I bought when I started collecting, even though I had never played it before. It was actually the one that inspired me to make this video, because it ended up being so frickin' good. It was the first game that I wanted to include. And it's cheap! I mean, that's why I bought it. It didn't cost very much. And I had seen it mentioned on GameSack. That was enough for me. Astyanax is a side-scrolling action game that features a 16-year-old high school student who is being plagued by weird dreams of some strange lady calling his name. All of a sudden, he is transported into another reality where he meets the fairy, Cutie. Yes, her name is Cutie. I'm going to tell you, I really enjoy the story in Astyanax. It's good, wholesome, 90s cheese. But naming her Cutie, that's going a bit far. Everyone else has such epic names. Astyanax, the bad guy is the evil wizard Blackhorn. And on and on. Why Cutie? Anyway, Cutie tells you that Princess Rosebud is being held captive by the aforementioned Blackhorn, and she needs you to save her. Something that occurred to me while capturing gameplay footage for this video is the fact that Astyanax is like, hey, I don't want to go save this person I don't know, I want to go home. And Cutie tells him that Princess Rosebud is the only one with the power to get Astyanax back to his homeworld. But, pay attention to this, Cutie is also the one that transported him to this world, knowingly leaving him stranded unless he does her bidding. Dick move, Cutie. Dick move. Anyway, while this game certainly has its flaws, it's a bloody good time. Astyanax, suddenly swole as hell between cutscenes, has an axe called Bash that can be upgraded twice. He also has 3 magic powers at his disposal. There is an attack meter at the bottom of the screen that depletes when attacking. The higher your gauge, the higher your damage. You don't want to just slash aimlessly in Astyanax. You want to take your time to do as much damage as possible. I really like the graphics in this one. The characters are nice and big, and there's some cool details in the background. I love the music in Astyanax. Not every song is incredible or even necessarily memorable, but the ones that are good are good. In my opinion, at least. Some of my favorite video game music. Now, Astyanax is not without its flaws. It controls kind of clunky. It's hard for me to explain, but there's just a weird sense of weight in the way he falls. I wish there was more variety in the character designs also. You'll see a lot of previously used enemies with palette swaps. Speaking of the enemies, they do 2 things in this game that I find as general nuisances in games from around this time. 1, you fall back when you take damage, and 2, enemies respawn. You really need to take your time through some of these levels or you will constantly succumb to the combination of these 2 things. Outside of that, I believe that Astyanax is truly a gem in the NES library that I don't hear many people talking about. Like I said, it's pretty inexpensive. Check it out. Up next, we have Gun-Nac. Gun-Nac was published by ASCII Corporation in 1991. It is a vertically scrolling shooter that was developed by Compile, the studio behind the LS series. The story in this one is just absolutely bonkers. Apparently, in the distant future when the planet's resources have been depleted, humans have started moving to an artificial solar system called Iota Synthetica. A wave of cosmic radiation sweeps through the solar system, causing inanimate objects to come to life and attack the residents. Thus, this game has some absolutely crazy enemies like lumber, candles, and robotic rabbits with giant carrots of doom. I didn't know how much I needed the phrase carrots of doom in my life. I think this is a giant roll of paper towels. I'm not sure though. Outside of the delightful quirkiness, you have such a great game. While it's definitely not as difficult as some of the other shooters on the system, there is a good bit of challenge in the back half of the game. I'm not the best at shooters, but I can get a good bit into this game before having too much trouble, and even when I start having difficulties, the game is so fun that I still want to keep trying. There are 5 weapons in the game that can be collected by picking up the numbers that are floating around. Collect more of the same number and you power up the weapon, which can also be powered up by the green chips with the letter P on them. There are also 4 bomb types that are collected with the letters. All of the weapons can be fun to play with, but I almost always go for the enemy-seeking number 3. The odd enemies definitely help keep you playing in order to see what they throw at you next. I think the game looks pretty good and the soundtrack is pretty solid. Sadly, this cartridge goes for a pretty penny these days. I discovered this randomly through emulation when I was in college and I've been hooked ever since. I think this is a great game for the NES that I never hear anyone talking about. If you're into shooters of the era, check this out for sure. Heck, even if you're not too big on the genre or you aren't very good at this style of game, I would still recommend you to check this one out. I still think there's a lot to like for everyone here. This next one is called Trog. Trog was published by Acclaim Entertainment in 1990. It is based on an arcade game that utilized claymation graphics. Trog is a maze game where you play as a dinosaur trying to collect all of the eggs while avoiding the one-eyed cavemen and other hazards. There are power-ups, including a pineapple, that will turn you into a T-Rex and allow you to devour the Trogs. Which, by the way, yeah, when you get hit by a Trog, they straight up eat you. It was quite jarring for me the first time this happened. I did not know that I was going to get eaten. You should pretty quickly know if this is something that you might be interested in by looking at the footage here. This is just a great iteration of the maze game that I had a ton of fun with. There are added obstacles as you progress and new stage elements and gimmicks such as transporters. My biggest complaint would probably be the music, which I found to overstay its welcome far quicker than it should have. But really, that's a small issue and Trog is a pretty all-around great experience. I look forward to checking out the original arcade game in the future, but for now I am happy to play this NES conversion. Check it out! You can punch caveman Cyclops creatures in the face, and who hasn't always yearned for that? Up next is Air Fortress. Air Fortress was published by HAL Laboratory in 1989. This is a game that I don't believe I had ever heard of before. I randomly chose this out of my ROM collection while researching for this video, and I am very glad that I did. Air Fortress is an interesting one because it alternates between 2 gameplay styles. First, you have a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up stage where you actually fly to the Air Fortress. During this stage, you take out enemies and gather energy and a more powerful weapon that is in limited supply for use in the Air Fortress stage. After that, you move on to the actual Air Fortress, where the gameplay becomes more of an action-adventure game. You fly around the Air Fortress, avoiding hazards and looking for the central reactors in order to destroy them. After the core is destroyed, you have a limited time to get to the exit before you explode, along with the Air Fortress. This game is lots of fun, and I'm really glad to have stumbled upon it. I really like the meshing of the two gameplay styles. There is a lot to like here. Now, I have to say that the music is very repetitive, and the graphics are pretty bland, really. Also, the difficulty ramps up way too quickly. This game gets really hard really fast. These things did not destroy my enjoyment though, and I highly recommend for fans of the NES who haven't tried this one to go ahead and give it a try. Now we move on to Wacky Races. Wacky Races was published by Atlas in 1992. This is a platformer based on the classic Hanna-Barbera cartoons and has you playing as Muttley on a series of missions. I was pretty surprised the first time I fired this up, and it was not a racing game. Graphically, I think it captures the feel of the cartoon fairly well, and the music contains some earworms for sure. Most importantly though, it's a pretty fun game. Muttley initially has a limited range bite as his attack, but the game features a Gradius-like almost upgrade system. As you collect bones, you cycle through the power-ups and select the one you want when it is highlighted. The game controls nice and I think provides a pretty all-around good experience. And one of the things I really liked about this game is the varied environments. I mean, we have a desert level, we have a water level, and we have an ice level. I don't think I've ever seen that in a platformer before. Joking aside, while it may not be the most original game, I think it does enough to stand on its own, and I definitely recommend that fans of the NES who have never played it should check it out. We will catch that damn bird one day! And this is Zombie Nation. Zombie Nation was published by Meldak in 1991. I discovered this one when I was doing my top 10 most expensive NES games video, and I fell in love pretty quickly with this one. The story in this one is absolutely bat insane. It's the futuristic year of 1999. You control the disembodied head of a samurai on a mission to reclaim a sword from the alien Darkseid, who has turned the United States population into zombies. You shoot eyeballs and projectile vomit as your weapon. How frickin' awesome is this premise? I mean, frickin' come on! Zombie Nation is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up, and a super frickin' hard one at that, which is my biggest complaint of the game. You can choose what level to play when you start, but no matter where you start, there will be pain. Lots of pain. Even with the crushing difficulty, I keep finding myself coming back to this one. I find this one to be incredibly charming in its oddness. I think the game looks pretty nice for the most part, and the music, while maybe not the most memorable, fits the action pretty well. While I can't say for sure if I would have gotten into this game without the insane premise, I can definitely say that I am a fan of it now. That being said, this game makes me very angry and gets me raging quite a bit, helped by the fact that this game has limited continues. It also takes way too long to build up your special attack, and I would like to be able to utilize that attack a bit more. But overall, I frickin' love this one. Like I said earlier, this is a very expensive cart for the NES, but it was re-released in the last few years on the Nintendo Switch and PC. Give this one a look. Captain Skyhawk. Captain Skyhawk was published by Milton Bradley in 1990. I wanted to make sure to include this one because you can find it everywhere. It's dirt cheap. If you subscribe to a retro mystery video game box and you don't have this one, you will be sent this game. You will see this game at stores. You will see this game at swap meets. You will eventually come across this game. I'm here to tell you that it's actually a good bit of fun and worth whatever you pick it up for. Captain Skyhawk features a few different gameplay styles, with the main sections playing sort of like Zaxxon, a shooter with an isometric view. When I first received this game and popped it in, I did not have high hopes, just because I had never heard of it and I thought it was going to be more of a flight simulator situation, which is not really my jam. I died a lot when I first started playing, either running into the enemy's bullets or into the walls of the levels, but after a few minutes I started to get a hang of it and quite enjoyed what I was playing. I actually think the fake 3D looks fairly nice, and the rail shooter and docking sections help keep things interesting. I'm sure this game will not be for everybody, but if any of this looks interesting to you, check it out, buy a few, and get started on Christmas early. Just give everybody a copy of Captain Skyhawk. Up next is Rockin Kats. Rockin Kats was published by Atlus in 1991. This platformer features an anthropomorphic cat named Willie on a mission to thwart the nefarious actions of Muggsy, the local canine crime boss. The game is steeped in 1920s influenced jazz style, of which I am a big fan. This is a game that seems like it would be based on a license, giving me a Top Cat kind of vibe, but this is an original IP. Willie's weapon is what the game calls a punch gun, which shoots a giant glove. With the glove, you can grab onto stage elements in order to do a spinning jump and attack, catch falling objects to use as a projectile, and even punch the ground with it in order to reach higher points in the level, in addition to simply punching with it. All of your different moves are quite fun to mess around with after you get the hang of them. The game is presented through a television where you can select what level you want to play, which are presented as different channels. Each channel represents its own whole complete story arc, with Willie saving the day at the end of each level and completing that story, which I thought was a really cute idea. There's also a shopping channel that allows you to buy different hands for your punch gun, such as one that shoots bombs or one that replaces your hand with a metal ball. There is also the jet sneaker upgrade that allows Willie to land slower, and extra lives that you can buy. Lastly, there is a bonus channel that allows you to play mini games in order to win extra money or extra lives. I really like the look of this game. While maybe not the most impressive game graphically, I love the jazz theming, and I think the character designs are top notch. My biggest complaint would be the enemies that respawn endlessly and annoyingly. This is really frustrating when you have a room full of enemies with ranged weapons and you are trying to use that ground punch to climb up the stage. Outside of that though, I don't have anything bad to say about the game. I've never really heard much talk about this game, and I think that's a shame. If you're looking for a new platformer to play for your NES, I would highly recommend taking a look at Rockin Kats. And on to Kickmaster. Kickmaster was published by Taito in 1992. This action platformer is another game that I just randomly picked to check out because I had never heard of it before. The story starts off with the entirety of the main character's family being brutally murdered, culminating in what may be the most riveting scene in video gaming history. My brother, my steel is no match for these creatures. Only with your great kicking skills can we hope for victory. Macron, don't die! Save the princess. You're the last hope for... No! You'll pay for this, Belzid! Thonolin, the Kickmaster in question, defeats enemies with his Feet of Fury. There are some roleplay elements in the game, with Thonolin learning new kick moves as he gains levels through experience. As you defeat enemies, they throw their belongings into the air, which you have to catch. This adds an interesting dynamic to the gameplay as you need to prioritize what items you are going to try and catch. There are special spells you will learn throughout the game that utilize your MP or magic points. I really like the graphics of this one. There are some neat details in the scenery and some cool effects here and there. There were also several bangers in this soundtrack. The action is engaging and it is very satisfying kicking your way through barrages of bad guys. This is just a fun game that I just can't believe that I had never heard of before. I think Kickmaster deserves a little time out in the sun. Check it out. And finally, we have Felix the Cat. Felix the Cat was published by Hudson Soft in 1992. This is a platform game based on the popular comic and cartoon character that was created all the way back in 1919. This is one that I was torn about including because I don't know how unknown this one is anymore. I feel like I hear more people mentioning this every once in a while, but I wanted to include this for anyone either new to the NES or who was just getting back into it and looking for some good, lesser-known games to play. This is one of my all-time favorite NES games. When I eventually make my obligatory top 10 favorite NES games, this will be on that list. This is not one that I knew about when I was growing up. I discovered this one simply because I was part of a Let's Play channel where we took turns playing the games. It was my week to play a game, and I wanted to compensate for any performance anxiety I would have, because this whole thing was new to me, and I was still kind of like uncomfortable playing games like in front of an audience. So I did a Google search for the easiest NES games. This was the one that was mentioned most often, thus this was chosen, and I fell in love with it immediately. Now, while yes, this is a fairly easy game for the NES, it's also a great joy to play through. As Felix, you start with a punching glove as a weapon. As you collect Felix heads, you power your weapon using items from your magic bag. Sometimes these power-ups will change depending on the level type. Some levels you're flying, and others you are in water. Look at my dolphin friend! If you get hit, you lose a power level, and if you get hit while you have the punching glove, you will lose a life. The game makes it really easy to get powered back up though, with those Felix heads littering the stages. I really like the music and find myself humming the tunes after I am done playing the game. I think it looks pretty nice too, capturing the essence of the property. I love the clouds with Kitty calling out to Felix here in the background. Nice touch. Felix the Cat is great for anyone just getting into retro games or just getting back into them. It's also great if you want to share the hobby with younger kids. It's a great introduction to NES platformers. And heck, this just came to my mind. It's great for people who are just like looking to be able to say that they beat more games in their lifetime. This is a good one. You will be able to beat it, I can guarantee. It was re-released in 2024 on the Nintendo Switch, PS4, and PS5, along with the very similar Game Boy version of the game. And there we go, 10 hidden gems for the NES. Were you familiar with all of these games? Have you played any of them? What other games should I include in future installments? Like I said at the top of the video, I have a list still to go that will give me at least 2 more videos. But make sure you let me know what you would like to see included in future videos so I can look for any potential hidden gems that I may not be privy to yet. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a beautiful day. And I will see you next time. Bye. I'd like to give a huge shout out and thank you to our channel members. A big shout out and thank you to Sadvlad, Retro Kart Collector, Byro's Vault, Jeremiah Thomas, Cool Cat 18, Lost in Thought, and Ronan Sid. If you would like access to special perks such as being shouted out at the end of videos, please check that join button down below.
We don't know how to free Zelda, but we do know why kids love them and critics hate them. John Stossel reports, nuts for Nintendo, when 2020 continues.